Good afternoon, everyone. I am Gabe Albornoz, Chair of our Health and Human Services Committee, joined by my colleagues on this joint committee session this afternoon, discussing another very critically important topic, which is a continuation of a discussion we had last fall. Joining us this afternoon, of course, is Chairman, I was about to call you Congressman, Councilmember Craig Rice of our Education and Culture Committee, Councilmember Navarro joining us from our Education and Culture Committee, and of course, Councilmember Glass joining us from the HHS Committee. And I'm sure we will be joined shortly by our colleague and friend, Councilmember Will Jawando. I am going to set this up just really quickly for context, but this is a continuation of a very productive session that we had last fall, which was at the request of Councilmember Navarro. We had a very robust conversation regarding the rise in challenges in our community regarding behavioral health. And what we had heard during an update was what we've been hearing for years, the challenges in recruiting a diverse set of staff that reflects the diversity of our communities. But as we all know now, by the sheer volume and the level of caseload that we're seeing and the depth of those cases, this truly has life or death consequences. And so it's even more important than it ever has been before that we establish a system of care that we can all be proud of and that really meets the needs of our residents, particularly now as we deal with the ramifications of the pandemic. And as a result of that very productive session, which we had participation from a number of our outstanding government agencies and several community stakeholders, the recommendation was made that a work group be formed, and that work group consists of key stakeholders both in the public and private sector, and that we would come back together to hear a presentation on the recommendations of that work group. Now, obviously, this last year has been disruptive, disorienting, and overwhelming. And so I know that it took this work group a little longer than all of us would have hoped, including them, to get together, but the good news is they have. And so we will be hearing more about the fruits of their labor thus far and seeing what we need to do both as a council and an executive branch, whether it be through policy, whether it be through budget, to support this work, because quite frankly, there is no greater priority right now. So joining us this afternoon are Jose Hernandez, the bilingual psychotherapist for the affiliated Sante Group, Jade Ann Renee, the program manager for our public health with the Collaboration Council, Joseph Wilson, senior director of mental health services for JESA, Emmanuel Nusta, the director of nursing, Maryland Treatment Centers Incorporated, Dr. Raymond Kroll, our director of HHS, Dr. Rolando Santiago, the chief of behavioral health and crisis services, and Daryl Gorman, the acting director and acting chief of recruitment. With that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Councilmember Rice, as co-chair of our discussion this afternoon, and see if he'd like to say some opening comments. And if any of my other colleagues would like to say some opening comments as well, please just text me. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Vice President and co-chair. I'm going to be very brief because this is an incredibly important conversation, but one that is coupled with what we see before us playing out in national media. As we see our current administration, who has reversed course and certainly opened up the understanding that many who are seeking asylum coming from Haiti, need to have refuge here in the United States and need to go through that process. We are going to have a continued influx of folks, including those who were fleeing some of the strife and turmoil in Afghanistan. And so it is far beyond what we had originally anticipated in our conversations talking about our Latinx and Hispanic immigrants that are coming to this country. And we really need to have a robust system, understanding that the instability of the world is very fragile and one in which we see, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's other countries and what's happening. And one of our council members can tell us all too well about this, living it and experiencing it and having family there, that this will continue. And so we need to make sure that we've created a system that is there to support those that are escaping some of the challenges and strife, and that we're providing the supports that are necessary to help them to assimilate back into a community system that does, lift them up and support them in a time of need. And so this couldn't be all more important than it is right now, but it's certainly something that was important then, years ago, when members of this council were talking about this, and continues to be the case even more so today. So with that, I turn it back to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Rice. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to associate myself with the remarks from Councilmember Co-Chair Rice. We definitely, I think, are at a crossroads here in the county. I am reminded of how the pandemic has absolutely exacerbated so many issues, so many disparities. We're seeing it in the education space. We're seeing it with mental health. We're seeing it in terms of instability with families. And so when we start talking about, for example, unaccompanied minors or, young people, children who are coming in, we need to also pause and realize that they're coming into families many times who they've never even met. Families that are already very stressed because of the pandemic. And so you start layering all of these particular challenges, and it becomes even more urgent for us to find innovative ways to address a lot of the needs. I think that for years, we have discussed the fact that one of the challenges is to find, licensed, bilingual, bicultural, whether it's our social workers or therapists, mental health professionals in general, and how can we begin to look into those innovative ways to create the pipeline, but that folks still do receive some type of support, maybe paired with licensed mental professionals so that we can have a much broader reach. And so, as Councilmember Rice said, these are long-standing conversations back when Umalawalia was the director of HHS, back when the Leggett administration. I mean, we have really, truly kept this in the forefront. But I really do believe that we are at a turning point right now, and I am very pleased with our last briefing. I know Dr. Santiago has experience in this arena, and this group that has been formed, I think can definitely bring us some really wonderful, innovative, outside the box, approaches that can then be used as models. I've had conversations with Dr. McKnight about some of these issues, and just people in the community, and everybody is ready to see how we can do whatever we can to address this in a much more proactive, innovative way, because this is a crisis of the sorts that we have never had to encounter and address here in Montgomery County. So thank you very much for, number one, the two chairs putting this follow-up together, Ms. Rodriguez for her great packet, but also to this work group. I really look forward to hearing what could be some of the recommendations that are going to come through.
Thank you. Well said. Councilmember Jawando has joined us. He will be off camera for a little while, but is with us now. So staffing us today are Ms. Nicole Rodriguez Hernandez, Ms. Essie McGuire, and Ms. Vivian Yao. I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Rodriguez Hernandez to make some opening comments and frame this with any other thing we may have missed before turning it over to the panel.
Good afternoon, council members, and to all of our participants for today's meeting. I think Chair Albonos, you introduced and framed this meeting wonderfully. So to make sure that we have enough time for everyone, I will just go ahead and say thank you to our nonprofit partners who are here today to present. So we will receive 3 formal presentations and have 4 nonprofits here today to speak on a few main topics, which include an overview of the services they provide and types of behavioral health professionals employed, language and cultural competency needs of current clients, including emerging trends, recruitment efforts, including partnerships with higher ed institutions or internships, and barriers to licensing and or recruiting culturally and linguistically diverse behavioral health professionals in Maryland. And we're so excited that they're here and that they can join as external stakeholders to the work group that all of you have mentioned that HHS and OHR are leading for us. And then after we hear from them, we will turn it over to HHS and OHR to hear their efforts since our last meeting in November, and increasing diversity in the mental health workforce, as well as next steps for the work group that the joint committee charged the executive branch with. So without further ado, I can go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Jose Hernandez for the presentation from Affiliated Sante.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and thank you, our wonderful council members that have worked hard on this very, very important topic. And I know you've not just been thinking about this just this year. That both of Gabe and Nancy, I know you've been very involved throughout the years within education and recreation. You've seen firsthand how intense the needs of mental health and well-being is, and not just to disregard anyone's contributions. Mr. Rice, I've heard great things about how you two are focusing on this very important topic. So I just want to thank the three of you to begin with for making this possible. And to get right into the topic, Sante, the name itself, for those of you who know French, basically that's it. It's focusing on our health. We are focused on three words: heal, recover, and thrive. You'll find these three words are action words, which means we just don't talk about it. We just don't do something about it. We are it. This is what we like to be. We like to be those healing agents in our community that provide mental health services. And we've been doing this over the last 20 years, based right here in Montgomery County. So we've seen how the transitions and the changes have evolved in meeting the growing diverse community. I myself moved to Montgomery County from Miami over 35 years ago. And so when I came here, I came to go to school and started out as studying in educational psychology and ventured my way through to where I am today. And so it's been a growing experience to see how mental health care really continues to evolve, and it must evolve because, as we've just heard, the needs of the recent immigrants coming, whether it be from Haiti or the diverse Latino countries, have diverse needs. They may share some common languages, they may share some common experiences, and they most definitely share the common need of mental wellness, mental health, especially when they come from traumatized experiences, whether it be from recent wars, food shortages, you name it. All this has brought to the forefront the need for meeting PTSD in the current day, not just from the trenches of warfare, political warfare, but real human life warfare. So going right into it, our mission at Sante is spelled out for us here. And basically in the next slide, we see that if that could, the next slide, there we go. Sante facilitates the well-being and safety of individuals at risk for emotional distress. And we've realized that it's not just the person, we also have to look at the community because we can't make it on our own. No, that old saying, no person is an island. The community is truly the stakeholder that makes it possible. And here in Montgomery County, we've partnered with Montgomery County. Sante works in meeting the needs of our diverse community, developing what we like to say tailor-made recovery-based healthcare services in a crisis situation and an overall response system. So our values, I'm not going to go right into, you can read it for yourself, but the one I want to focus in on is the word diversity. We must embrace our diversity. In order to do that, we have to understand what are our strengths. In mental health delivery of care, strength-based approach is very, very big, as it should be. And we must also continue to look at, through the lens of each person having a fresh perspective, is what does that really mean, delivering the mental health services that are needed. And certainly with the growth and prosperity that we've seen in Montgomery County, we have a very thriving, growing Latino community. I'm very aware of that, having worked with that over the last 30 years, as I mentioned. And so it's needed across all all groups. And so that's what we're here for. It's really to look at, if we look at the next slide, really to look at what that looks like and what is the principles that we're going to live by. And we don't need to go into all of the definitions here. We can move to the next slide. But the key point is understanding diversity is a fact. It's a reality. We can't ignore it. We have to address what are the diverse needs. And we all know, we've heard about the health disparities that exist. Individuals are not able to access healthcare all over because of the socioeconomic issues. In Montgomery County, I'm really pleased what the county has done in the county council in addressing overall healthcare. But certainly in mental health, we are at a disadvantage because we do not have enough professionals that are trained to address the mental health care needs. So how do we do this? Well, inclusion is where we begin. We have to look at where are we going to find the individuals and include them in this process. This has to begin early on. It can't wait till the person's in their master's program and getting ready to complete. In order to, in the state of Maryland, you have to have the 2-year requirement of being supervised. We can't wait to begin the process there. We have to begin with the process as Montgomery College is looking into helping individuals with what could be a 2-year program or even a certificate program of get them certified in the area to where they can walk in and provide a certificate showing that they have been trained to be frontline staff, to provide the interpretive, the translation services, and to work alongside licensed individuals. This is something we're looking at Sante. Belonging is essential. Belonging is an outcome. But in order to belong, we have to start with including people in the beginning. So that's where our differences make us stronger. Moving to the next slide, we find these are the different areas that we provided services in Montgomery County. The Senior Services Program is the program that I am placed within. I've been working with seniors that are classified as individuals that are above the age of 60. So if anyone hearing here today is 60 or above, give me a call. We're here to help you. And this is possible because Montgomery County saw the need and funded this program. So it's at no cost to the residents of Montgomery County. But then as the program was funded, we saw the need that, hey, we don't have enough funds really to provide services to the Spanish-speaking community. So an additional funding provision was provided so that then Sante could hire a bilingual bicultural therapist. And so that's a great way how county agencies and the county government working together with the private sector can really make this work in making mental health services available to everyone. Peer Wellness and Recovery is a wonderful program. As you know, if a person is not a licensed therapist, they can come in and work alongside mental health as a person who's experienced having gone through a substance use disorder, for example. They can come in as a peer recovery specialist, and that's a great way that we found of incorporating individuals from the diverse community, even though they're not fully licensed. Outpatient mental health services is another area that I would say in Montgomery County does a great job, but there's still a tremendous need for bringing in staff to fulfill the diverse community that we have. Psychiatric recovery services is an extension of that again. Now, fortunately to say, we find that we do have more individuals trained in the capacity on the upper end of the spectrum. But the problem there is being able to pull them away from wherever they're working to come work for a nonprofit that doesn't have the same level of ability to pay them at a higher salary. So how do you juggle getting people in to work where there's a greater need when there's a limitation of funds? So that's a real barrier. How do we solve it? I'm going to leave that up to the committee to address, and I'm sure you're going to find some great answers as to how to begin addressing that issue. Moving to the next slide. So this just briefly shows you This is a brand new strategy that Santi has put into place. We're trying to really streamline how it is that we include everyone that we can on the front line, move them into the company by introducing them to different job positions, and then implementing the process of getting them actually into the becoming employed by Santi. So moving to the next slide, we move on. These are just some platforms utilizing technology. Folks, we can't get away from it. We need to use different tools and platforms, technology, in order to keep up, because the private sector has been doing this for a long time, and the government is a little bit slower, but it's coming sooner and quicker in the government as well as the nonprofit sector. We're learning to function like the for-profit entities in utilizing technology. So that's another answer to how do we include more people that are needed to fulfill these positions. Moving to the next slide. So Clear Company is an applicant tracking system that we use. Again, technology along with a company that provides that resourcing on the HR side, because if we tie up our behavioral health people trying to solve this, it takes them away from their real area of priority where they need to be focused on delivering the services. Having your HR component working together with the behavioral health staff is crucial, because not all HR folks really understand the demands and needs that are faced today that we're trying to fulfill. So moving to the next slide. Indeed, you all are acquainted with it. And if you're not, it's a great platform for people who are looking for employment, as well as for those who are looking to hire individuals. Going to the next slide. LinkedIn, same thing, and we'll jump to the next slide. So what are the barriers to hiring? I've mentioned to it, shortage of qualified workers. We all are aware of this. That's why we're having this important committee. Candidates who are multilingual command very high salaries. Now, I'm happy to hear and see how Montgomery County realized this and does provide that additional bonus or additional pay increase for individuals who are certified, whether it be on the first stage or second stage of their linguistic skills and writing skills. It's great that the county is looking at that. So I applied the county for having done that, and we must continue to look at increasing that as the private sector also is doing the same thing. Recruiting costs continue to increase, utilizing all the technology that I just talked about, the cost of recruiting staff. When you're looking at approving budgets, please have your procurement departments be aware of this important aspect, because when these added costs are not included in the procurement process, approval process, we're really shooting ourselves in the foot as far as delivering services in the county. And because the gap's only going to get bigger. The private sectors, they're for a private sector, they're gaining the income, they're getting the revenue stream, and they're getting bigger. I don't know if you heard, I won't name the pharmacy, but there's even a pharmacy now that's expanding their services, even right here in Montgomery County, and they're going to provide mental health services inside the pharmacy. So the private sector, they're doing it, but we got to help the nonprofit sector as well. We've heard about the pandemic. The pandemic has made this need a greater reality. I've worked with kids who have had severe dysfunction, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, all since the pandemic began over a year and a half ago. And folks, it's not going to go away. We have to face reality. This is a growing issue. The results of the pandemic, or the impact of the pandemic, is going to make it even harder for us, because we're facing right now a shortage of healthcare workers who are either leaving the workforce because of what's happened, or they're just choosing not to be as involved in healthcare. So there's no better time than for us to have this discussion. I'm excited. I thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity, and I look forward to continue to be a part of the answer in meeting the needs here in Montgomery County.
Thank you. We will continue to move on with our next presentation from the Collaboration Council, which I will share.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Jade Rennie, and I am the Public Health Program Manager at the Collaboration Council. Never has there been such a time in history where the need for culturally and linguistically competent mental health providers has been as critical as it is today. And as an immigrant from Jamaica, I can say that this important conversation is needed as we see an influx of migrants coming to the US for better opportunities. So before I begin, I'll give a very brief overview of the Collaboration Council. We are designated as the local management board with the purpose of convening county leaders and stakeholders to collaborate and identify priorities for children, youth, and families. We have a variety of service areas, but for the purpose of this discussion, I will talk about how we increase access to care for children with intensive needs. Via this service area, we partner with agencies that deliver youth and family-driven culturally competent services for youth with behavioral health challenges to promote success in schools, strengthen bonds in families, and to develop ways of coping and overcoming emotional and behavioral challenges. So if you go to the next slide, it will give you a very quick overview. Access to care is provided via our Pathways to Service, which helps children and their families connect with community-based and support services in the county, and our local care team, which is a pathway to wraparound services here in the county, which is an interagency team of public child-serving agencies, along with consistent family voice representation that problem solve how best to use local resources to keep the family intact and increase both adult and child youth family members functioning. Next slide, please. So majority of the children and families served via our Pathways office and our LCT are from countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. So there's a high demand for behavioral health professionals that not only speak the languages, and the languages that we're seeing are Spanish and French Creole, but they should also share similar cultural values and experiences as families being served. We know as professionals in this field that clients, especially clients of color, are often more receptive to mental health services when providers share similar social, racial, and/or cultural backgrounds. Next slide, please. So we understand the importance of having trained and licensed professionals in the service area. And due to the sensitivity of our cases, we do employ MSWs, LCSWs, and psychologists. And because we're committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, our goal is to always hire trained professionals that not only bring their professional experience, but their cultural values to our organization as well. What we've done and what we've continued to do is to offer internship and fellowship opportunities, particularly in other areas, but we're looking to extend this opportunity to children with intensive needs. And it's crucial that we build relationships with colleges and universities, particularly those with a diverse student population and departments committed to addressing untreated trauma across the developmental spectrum, because it provides an opportunity to recruit more diverse clinicians at different levels. So we have undergraduate and graduate levels. It creates opportunities for students to obtain required hours for licensure. And it allows us to create a safe space for emerging clinicians to utilize their training. That has been a barrier that we've noticed, that a lot of minority behavioral health specialists don't feel like they have a safe space to utilize their training. So it's important that we have that. There are several barriers to recruiting. If we continue with the slides, next slide, thank you. So there are several barriers to recruiting, and that is the lack of diversity, equity, and inclusivity in organizations. I think that these have become buzzwords, and not a lot of organizations are demonstrating that via their staffing patterns and those in leadership. A lot of behavioral health specialists don't have the ability to provide care to target populations served by the organization. That has to be remedied. There's very little to no opportunity for growth within some organizations for minority behavioral health professionals. And we're seeing that a lot of these organizations don't have a lot of minority professionals in leadership roles. Low salary or lack of incentives. Montgomery County is an extremely expensive county. So are we offering salaries where these specialists are allowed to not only survive, but thrive? And there are other competitive job opportunities, and we're seeing that with the pandemic. A lot of people now have the ability to work from home. Working as a mental health professional is tedious, it's taxing, and it's stressful. And we see that a lot of people are leaving the profession to find something that is a little bit easier on their mental health while helping those who are struggling during this time. So I'm excited to see what this work group comes up with and how we can start removing these barriers and helping those who desperately need mental health services within the county. So thank you.
Thank you. And now we will have a presentation from Jessa, followed by Maryland Treatment Center.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for the opportunity to talk with you today. My name is Joe Wilson. I am the Senior Director for Mental Health Services at Jessa. Myself, a lifelong, since adulthood, resident of Montgomery County and a former MCPS educator, and having worked for a number of nonprofits in the area, seen over the years the challenges that you all are talking about today, and happy to be a part of the conversation and hopefully some of the solution finding that we can do together. So a brief look at Jessa, the Jewish Social Service Agency. They're a over 100-year-old organization. They began services in around 1920 in Montgomery County. And since 1965, we've been providing mental health services to the community, and not just in dedicated mental health service department, but across all of our services. You may know that Jessa also provides services to a significant immigrant population through the Holocaust Survivor Program. And so we work quite a bit with individuals and communities that are challenged in accessing mental health services, not just through this one service, but through all of our services, whether it's our hospice program, Holocaust Survivor Program, or seniors program. We are the largest group of in-network providers in Montgomery County, and I think it's important to highlight that's one of the challenges I think that a number of people face. While there can be, depending on where you live in Montgomery County, a great number of mental health providers to access, there are very few that will be available to those that are seeking to use their insurance benefits or looking for an in-network provider. We're a member of over 15 insurance company panels, and we work to make sure all of our providers are as credentialed with those providers, with those insurance companies as possible. It's incredibly difficult to maintain that kind of licensure and credentialing operation, but it's certainly what distinguishes Jessa, I think, from a number of other places, in that you can come and use your insurance benefits and access services in a more affordable way. We provide outpatient mental health services, individual, group, and family therapies. We do offer psychiatry services as well. And again, we're an insurance reimbursable provider. In addition, we also provide care coordination and care management services. We work with adults with disabilities. We provide senior care management and care coordination. We have our collaborative care program, which is a private pay program designed to work with individuals with disabilities, keeping them in their homes. And we also provide DDA care management services for those individuals that are receiving DDA funding. We have a diverse number of programs and opportunities for individuals to receive services, and I would like to certainly echo the comments of my colleagues in terms of how we're able to provide a diverse workforce the opportunity to serve the community through not just mental health services, but peer recovery services and adjunctive programs that can support access to mental health care, in addition to direct services of mental health treatment. We have several contracts with the county. We are certainly a partner with MCPS, currently working in 10 of their schools, providing access to mental health care for children, students, and families referred by the school that can't find access anywhere else. We also work in the Synagogue Liaison Program to reach out to communities through their faith community to be able to engage mental health services that way. One of the challenges that Jessa has noticed in terms of serving the diverse community that is Montgomery County is not just the staffing, but also too, as others have shared, the service model that we offer in terms of working to be a community mental health agency. Those of you who remember, 25 years ago when Medicaid shifted their funding model, and there were a number of community mental health organizations that were thriving at the time, and we've whittled that number down significantly. And the challenge really is that model of service is difficult and, as others have said, expensive to keep moving, despite the fact that you've got really low insurance rates for reimbursement and you have lack of funding in other areas. It's hard to keep that community mental health approach sort of moving forward and being able to be robust enough to meet the community needs. And that's a huge challenge for us. We do leverage a lot of philanthropy and work hard to combine and leverage philanthropy dollars with other dollars to provide services. But it's an extremely challenging and difficult task, as you might imagine, to do that, in addition to, as others have shared, recruiting for staff and being able to manage a diverse workforce and develop a workforce that meets the diverse needs of the community. We are certainly using evidence-based practices at JESA. I'm sure a number of other places do, and really work hard to infuse that with a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens to ensure that we're working to connect with individuals who are seeking mental health services. We often understand that, particularly in immigrant communities or those individuals that have different racial, ethnic backgrounds than our providers, that this may be their first foray into mental health treatment. We want to ensure that we can make that first experience both meaningful and productive. And our goal is to use evidence-based practices and be able to use them in culture-based ways that really connect with and develop a relationship with the individual seeking treatment. We all know that the challenges that face us as providers include those that will cycle through the system and never really feel like they're getting their needs met. And creating an agency in an environment where people can have a first experience where they can feel connected and feel engaged is really important at JESA, and we focus quite a bit of our resources on that. We also use evidence-informed practices. High fidelity wraparound is our systems of care informed way of working with children and families with intensive needs, partnering with the Collaboration Council, and we're happy to provide that program as well. Like other providers, we also employ individuals with varying levels of certification and degrees, and also, like our partners, understand that really the need to recruit individuals starts well before their time in training in college. We have developed a fairly robust student program. We take an average of about 10 students a year. We'd like to take more, but there's a hidden cost there because they require field instructors, which is a licensed professional who has time, generally 1.5 to 2 hours of their week, to be able to provide supervision and training to that student. And that's a significant cost for us because, of course, that person is taken offline they can't provide direct services themselves, but they're supporting a student who may or may not be able to, based on their placement, experience, and training, provide services as well. So we have a number of individuals that are first-year students. That's a different type of training than second-year students. What we do find is, though, that having that student program is a terrific way to build a pipeline for applicants. That once they're graduated, they get their graduate licensure level, the LM here in Maryland. And we then offer and provide them mentorship and training to get them fully licensed. And we find that that's been really a success for us. The challenge, as I know my colleagues will agree, is that when an individual becomes fully licensed, they then have an opportunity to explore a lot of different kinds of employment opportunities and pay structures. So there are a number of private practice groups in the county that hire individuals at a much higher rate than we can afford to match. And they've become fairly sophisticated, frankly, in their approach to recruiting and hiring, and will offer a number of benefits that we as an organization can offer, such as ongoing training, CEU training, et cetera, supervision, and even access to training in evidence-based practices. One of the things that Jess has been successful at doing is using training in evidence-based practices, such as parent-child interactional therapy, to have individuals come to us because we're known to be able to provide that training and experience, and they see that as really valuable. So we've been able to recruit and retain individuals that way, but of course the private practice groups are doing some of the same things, and so it really does become a challenge with regard to money and how much we can provide in terms of reimbursement. And oddly enough, when the economy is doing very well and people can afford to pay out of pocket for mental health services, the private practices see a large boon, if you will, and then the community mental health agencies such as Hhs see a drain of our staff. Yet the individuals we need to serve who are looking to access in-network healthcare, that pool doesn't shrink. They don't follow them to the private practice. They stay with us. So that's a pretty significant challenge. In terms of who we serve, we note the language and culture-based needs of individuals and families here. We have increased our diversity. While we have served a number of individuals from Eastern Europe and from other cultures associated with the Holocaust Survivor Program, we've expanded into the more diverse communities of Montgomery County, including African American communities, Latino communities, communities of color, particularly through some of the new programs that we've been able to establish at Hhs. And what's been quite frankly helpful as a recruiting tool is that we're able to offer individuals opportunity to serve the community that they wish to serve. We were just very successful in the last 10 months about hiring 5 Spanish-speaking advanced certified Spanish-speaking therapists, because we were able to work with them and identify the communities that they wanted to serve and make sure that we could have connections to those communities and serve those individuals. And we find that's been a very effective recruiting tool. As I also mentioned too, our student placement and training program has been really successful as well. Although, and others have shared this, not to get too into the weeds, but there's different rates of reimbursement depending on the level of the provider's licensure. And certainly that's been a challenge for us. So the graduate level individuals that are licensed at that level don't get reimbursed as much as, say, the providers that are fully licensed, the LCSW. And so that's been a challenge for us, particularly when you also have Medicaid or Medicare, particularly Medicare, will not allow anyone beyond a certain licensure level to provide services. So that's been a bit of a challenge for us. We also see in terms of recruitment that offering that supervision towards full licensure has been really helpful. We have about half our staff are fully licensed, half our staff are graduate level licensed. And so we've got a fairly good mix, that although I will say that 5 years ago, our staff was more 85% fully licensed and 15% graduate licensed, because those fully licensed individuals have gone on to more lucrative positions. Some of the challenges, of course, as others have shared, and I would associate myself with their remarks, that there's an increase in demand, of course, as we know, and there is a reduced focus on community mental health practice. What we've begun to speak with our university partners about is how can we participate in developing and even implementing a training program that really prepares individuals for a career in community mental health, which is to say serving the community based on the community's needs, working with public partners, nonprofit organization partners to develop not just traditional mental health services, but also go beyond that. We've also seen a great surge in peer-to-peer recovery services, which is where we can find a number of individuals with lived experience, with valuable culture and ethnic roots and connection to community that we can leverage to engage individuals to participate in mental health services or mental health adjunctive services. And so that's been really quite helpful. I would agree the funding for recruitment and retention is really difficult to come by, and that increased competition with private practice groups. So our challenges are increasing and incredibly real. I will say for the first time since I've been at Hhs, I've been there 5 years, the fiscal year 21, we served fewer people than in fiscal year 20. And that's because as providers left to pursue either home-based work or permanent remote jobs or private practice work, we weren't able to continue to serve all the people they were serving because we didn't have enough people hired to take on those cases, so to speak. So it's a really, we're seeing certainly the challenges increasing over time, and certainly welcome conversation as to how we might be able to partner to find solutions.
Thank you so much. And now for our final nonprofit provider, Maryland Treatment Center, I turn it over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be part of this group. I am pleased to be here on behalf of Maryland Treatment Centers. My name is Emmanuel Noster. I am the administrator and the director of nursing at Maryland Treatment Center. I have been in this position for quite a while and have actually practiced within the organization for more than 20 years in various capacities. And I have seen the resistance to treatment from people of foreign descent and the progressive transformation of services that Montgomery County has made to get everybody together to help people of foreign descent. Just a brief note about Maryland Treatment Center. Maryland Treatment Center Incorporated is the largest provider of substance abuse treatment services in Montgomery County. We have partnered with the county for over 30 years to provide residential and outpatient services for those struggling with the disease of addiction. In Montgomery County, Maryland Treatment Center operates the Avery Road Treatment Center, which is strictly substance abuse, the Avery Road Combined Care, Dual Diagnosis Program, Lawrence Court Halfway House, Avery House for Women and Children, the Journeys Outpatient Services, and the STEER program. STEER is S-T-E-E-R. It's an acronym for Stop, Triage, Educate, Engage, and Rehabilitate. So it's an outreach program that goes into the various hospitals and actually meet people outside of the professional buildings to talk to them about the importance of treatment and to engage them, to connect them with treatment opportunities. Each program is made up of multidisciplinary teams, including psychiatrists, nurses, nurse practitioners, social workers, licensed counselors, and peer coaches. The population served by Maryland Treatment Center closely mirrors the cultural diversification of Montgomery County. We strive to recruit highly qualified personnel to meet the need of the population and focus on recruiting efforts on creating diversity in the workplace. Maryland Treatment Center partners with the University of Maryland Social Work, School of Social Work, to provide internship as well as other master's level counseling programs. We also partner with Howard University Hospital. They provide us with psychiatric residents for training in substance addiction, in substance use disorder. We have also partnered with the Welcome Back Center to assist foreign trained individuals in behavioral health in finding employment within the county. As is true in many industries, we are currently struggling with employee recruitment, and we are in the process of expanding our recruitment efforts. While many of the nursing and administrative staff are fluent in languages other than English, we found it difficult to recruit certified and licensed bilingual therapists and counselors. Licensing board in Maryland often do not recognize the academic achievements of foreign trained professionals, making it very difficult for these highly competent individuals to engage in the workforce. And we've also seen that even in situations where they recognize the education and the credentials, it takes quite a while for the professional board to make a decision on licensing or giving provisional licenses to these highly trained individuals so we can utilize them to better serve our population. I do agree with my colleagues about recruitment and retaining, especially in times like this where the job force is generally poor because of the effects of COVID. We're struggling with that, and we hope to do better improving the techniques that we use, the incentives that we can come up with to recruit and retain professionals so we can better serve this population. Thanks for having me here, and I look forward to making progress here. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes our presentations from our nonprofit providers who are participating in today's meeting. We have Dr. Crowell and Dr. Santiago here from HHS, as well as Mr. Daryl Gorman from OHR to discuss HHS's efforts in increasing diversity in the mental health workforce, as well as next steps for the work group. And I did want to inform the council members that we also have representatives from MCPS here if there's any questions that may relate into that field. I know that there's a presentation that HHS has to present, so I'll turn to Dr. Santiago or Dr. Crowell to start us off, and whenever you'd like me to share the presentation, I'll do that.
Good afternoon, everyone. It took me a second to get my camera on. So first of all, thank you to the staff and to the committee for pulling this great group together to talk about what I regard as both the challenges and the resources that are available in Montgomery County to meet this challenge. It has been this has been an issue that we have talked about for many years, and we've struggled with and wrestled with, and we continue to wrestle with it for all the reasons that you heard today. I think we've got our watchword around this is building the pipeline, and that includes recruiting and bringing in candidates who've already completed their training and are qualified and licensed by doing broader outreaches, efforts in our outreach, and doing more work to pay them a wage that is competitive with other areas, other places they can go. But it's also building the pipeline from within the county, from our high schools, our community colleges, and universities, basically to strengthen the use of what is really Montgomery County's greatest resource in terms of diversity. I mean, we have a phenomenal array of community members and rich in diversity. I think we need to be figuring out how do we tap into that and keep people here in the county who want to be here in the county and give them a pipeline to be able to get into this field and stay in this field and contribute to their own homes and counties. And then the last one, of course, is there's the need, as you've heard, to strengthen the provider capacity. Perhaps there's an implementation of class standards so that our collective provider community has an understanding of what's expected and what they need to be doing to try to grow their own staffing diversity. And then lastly, I think a greater innovation into what and who and what and where we provide services, including some advocacy at the state level that we can talk about as we go through this conversation. I want to turn it over to Dr. Santiago and Director Gorman to talk a little bit about where we are at this point. There's some things I would add to this mix, but I want to let them do their piece of this, and I'll come back and join you all for the conversation, for the discussion.
Just a quick time check. I know Councilmember Navarro is first in the queue to ask questions. So after the presentations, we'll go to her, and I believe she has a hard stop close to 3 o'clock. So I want to make sure she has the opportunity to ask those questions. So Dr. Santiago, if you can bear that in mind during the presentation, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure, I'll keep it as pretty brief. So I'll do an update, and Nicole, if you have the presentation and can put it up, would be great. So this is a presentation we've put together with Susan Sealing, Monica Martin, of course, Dr. Raymond Kroll, and myself. And it's an update from previous presentations that we've done in the past. So I'll start with some of the department-wide efforts that we've done to increase the diversity in mental health professionals here at DHHS. First of all, we've been increasing the diversity of recruitment platforms to advertise therapists, social worker, community health nurse, community service aides, client assistant specialist vacancies. And what we mean by these recruitment platforms are some of the tools that we've heard from the nonprofit providers like Indeed and LinkedIn and those kinds of platforms. We've convened a DHHS work group focused on developing proactive relationships with area and online colleges and universities so that we can increase intern diversity and expand intern opportunities. We are planning an early spring 2022 job fair for graduating therapists, social workers, and nurses. We will be working closely with area and online colleges and universities to advertise the event and draw a diverse pool of potential candidates. And we are working in coordination with OHR to convene a task force work group to develop recommended strategies focused on increasing diversity in mental health professionals in HHS. This task force will focus both on new hires and creating a pipeline through partnerships with colleges and universities. And the target date for convening this task force is this fall, 2021. So now I'm going to talk about two of our service areas where we've had some successes. I'm within the area that I represent, behavioral health and crisis services. Over the last 6 months, we've been vigorously working at a new intern program. We've had other service areas, for example, child, youth, and families that has had a vigorous intern program. And fortunately, we have inherited some staff from there who are very passionate. And so we've stood up an intern program. And I'm happy to announce that as of this September, we have 4 interns. 3 of them are coming through a new MOU that we have with Walden University for nurse practitioners. And we've had a long time MOU with the University of Maryland at College Park. And that's where we're getting 3 interns from Walden University, 2 of them African American. These are nurse practitioners. 1 of them is white, and 1 social work intern from the University of Maryland who's Spanish speaking. And now I will do some updates on children, youth, and family services, especially from school and community-based youth services, whose administrator is Monica Martin, and I know you're familiar with her since she's presented in the past. She works with a group of providers, Shepherd Pratt, Every Mind, City of Rockville. So these are the successes that this provider group has had. Hiring of non-licensed staff has allowed providers to expand Latinx, bilingual, African American, and Middle Eastern staff. They also have had an excellent addition to mental health counseling that allows providers to reach more students, approximately 140 additional youth served since the inception. Also, they've worked with therapeutic recreation, or they have therapeutic recreation staff who have worked alongside SCYS therapists in establishing a relationship and rapport with schools to begin these therapeutic programs, which are oftentimes after school. Students also have discussed their struggles related to COVID-19 and the impact it has had on them and their families in these therapeutic programs. But students are also learning skills relating to engaging with others, both peers and adults, and different ways to transition back into in-person learning, which is a mode of operation right now at MCPS. Providers have developed a relationship of familiarity and trust with students and families, and connected some students to counseling. And being able to explain counseling to parents in a familiar setting has been very helpful in making the connection to clinical services in a culturally competent manner. There are some limitations and some lessons learned from these organizations. One of them is that non-licensed staff rely on clinical staff support to develop sound activity plans. And as you know, that's very, very critical that we have supervisors who are committed. And I know that that the council and these two committees have been quite concerned and have suggested in the past that we find ways to compensate supervisors as well for their time and to incentivize them into doing this very important supervision. And also another limitation is as COVID-19 numbers climb, staff is experiencing a higher number of cancellations due either to students' fears or in some cases students' symptoms of illness. Some suggestions for changes or improvements in mental health supports for youth by non-licensed staff is the development of curricular benchmarks to guide staff in planning of activities, and that's underway. And also develop either through funding or reallocation a true career ladder for non-licensed staff. That's very critical and very, very, very important. I think that's the update, and I'll send it back, I believe, to Nicole or Dr. Kroll, who may want to add some comments.
Yeah, I just wanted a couple of things that I wanted to reference in this, and one of them is that this is, from my perspective, what I would consider a reboot to this work from the work we started last fall. To be quite fair, I think there were a number of things that took place that obviously were not on our radar when we started this. We had a complete turnover at the college in terms of the leadership of the college. We also had a significant turnover in MCPS and change in administration, plus their appropriate preoccupation with how do they get their students back into school. That's taken a lot of their bandwidth and a lot of our collective bandwidth to try to figure out how we make that happen. So for us, it's a chance to reboot. And I think that the first part of this next step is here today with this group of folks that are in the room and pulling them into making them a part of that task force as we go forward, an active part of that task force, because this isn't, we've done work, and you heard from Rolando about the work we've done inside HHS, but this can't stay inside HHS. It's got to be about how we pull the whole workforce, the workforce up for the entire provider network, the entire community. So a joint task force that I think is co-led by the community is going to be vital in that. We'll reconnect with Montgomery College and MCPS, obviously, but the other one, our HHS goal is still to create pathways for county residents to move into healthcare and behavioral health especially, but that includes a broad variety of opportunities. I think that and a broad set of approaches, high school and college, university, graduate school, however they connect, whenever and however we connect to them, to figure out how do we support and certify them, how do we get them through training and internship opportunities. You've heard Dr. Santiago and I think at least one of our other partners talk about peer recovery specialists, and that is a pathway, an entry-level pathway for many folks to come in and bring their skill sets and their interests into the field and get certified and funded. We've created, Dr. Santiago has created, since he's been here, a plan for recruiting and hiring peer recovery specialists into the department. And that I see as the start of a pipeline, a pathway, a career pathway in the department. That's also happening with Maryland Treatment Centers and the STEER program. So it's the same kind of service but bringing it into our governmental fold. The other piece for me is this retention, and I think that is recruitment and retention. You know, I think Joe either Joe or Jose made a comment about the issue of retention and competing with the private sector. The cost of a graduate education is insanely high at this point, and this is one of the few counties in the country where you can go into a private practice and make enough to pay your loans. So we need to find some ways to think about how do we do loan forgiveness for folks who are coming in and spending time with us in this system in the county, and holding on to them by giving folks who are coming in at lower levels career pathways to get to higher levels of job opportunities, and through academic support and training, and priority hiring preferences, perhaps even for our county residents. On the provider side, I think that the piece that really struck me today, and I want to just make sure we don't lose track of, is this issue around the state board policies and guidelines for foreign trained professionals. We have an enormous number of people who come to this country who are well trained in other countries and in other universities across the world, and getting them. We've had the Welcome Back Center, and we've done what we can to diversify that population, so they're drawing on the diversity that is Montgomery County, but also finding ways to get those folks licensed and credentialed into the state system faster and earlier is going to be an important advocacy piece that we have to do. The other advocacy piece, of course, is reimbursement rates. What Medicaid pays for pays and reimburses private providers at this point is insufficient to pay people an adequate salary to keep them in place. And so the shift from public service side to private practice is completely understandable. And when you look at the OLO reports on mental health that we've had over the last few years, they all kind of support that. There are mental health professionals aplenty, but their capacity, they're not in the public service side, they're in the private side where they can make enough to support themselves. The other piece is for provider side is the implementation of class standards, the national class standards, and looking at diversity, not just on the front line, but in management and leadership of the programs. And I think that is one of the places. I did a survey in Baltimore many years ago of the behavioral health providers in Baltimore City, and it came back pretty much in this very stratified way. The higher up in the organizational structure you got, the whiter it became, and the fewer people of color and so the greatest number of people of color who were working in those programs were folks who were cleaning the buildings and taking care of the administrative supports of the buildings. So we need to make sure that we've got a provider network that has the capacity to recruit and is accountable for recruiting a diverse workforce going forward. The last thing I think is that we need to ensure that we are reaching out and serving the diverse community. African, Caribbean communities, our Haitian communities, our Ethiopian community, which is one of the largest Black communities in the county. And even as we recruit Spanish speakers into the workforce, we need to understand that Spanish is not a monolithic language. It is incredibly complex and diverse, and we need to make sure we're recruiting people who understand the language that is spoken and relate to the people that are here in the county. We have a wealth of resources, and we need to pull them together. And I think that what we haven't done at this point is pull them together in a way that is a broader collaborative for training and career development. So I'm hoping this will be the start of launching that task force to get that work fully underway. So I'll stop there and turn it back over to you, to the council.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kroll. I know, Mr. Gorman, you're here representing our Office of Human Resources, but in the interest of time, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Navarro to share some reflections, thoughts, and ask some questions. So, Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate this presentation. Each of the presenters, Mr. Hernandez, Ms. Reedy, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Neustadt, you really touched upon key issues. And I can tell you that they're definitely not new issues to this council. The difference, I think, and I said that in my opening remarks, is that we have reached now, I think, a tipping point. I think that, when I was a member of the Board of Education, we talked about a lot of our very diverse communities is almost like niche areas. Whereas now, as you all know, MCPS is 72% children of color. Montgomery College is 78% students of color. Montgomery County, the latest census dump that we got is showing very clearly that Montgomery County is way over 50% of color, and that our immigrant population is way over, like something like 42%. Speaks another language than English, for example. So I do believe that we have reached now, we have arrived at a point where these conversations cannot be about, approaches that seem to be nice to do and nice to have, but this has to be the norm. And the challenge to do that, I think, has been very well articulated by all of you, because that issue of recruitment, of retention, making sure that we support our professionals where they come, and then the affordability to the clients, it is definitely a combination that is so hard to address. But I believe that the good news is that, as usual here in Montgomery County, we have a lot of assets out there that we can leverage. And it's incumbent, I think, upon us as policymakers, decision makers that, take votes for budgets to then be real about racial equity and social justice and invest accordingly. Because not doing that is just going to exacerbate what is already a crisis. So I am really excited about what this work group will come up with. I feel like in some ways, I know it's been hard to meet, but you've all articulated already what the issue is. You have the data, what the bbest practices are. And I can't wait to see under each of those categories that you have identified the possible, the recommendations that can be strategic and to the point. So with that, I have to say some of the things that really jumped out at me. I saw mindfulness as one thing that was included in the presentation. Talk about something that we just never really pay too much attention to, but can help so much in terms of prevention. I would love for us to figure out how we can be more intentional around mindfulness, especially in our school system with our young people who have faced so much trauma. I think that would be really important. No doubt, I think we need to work with OHR. The GO committee would be happy to partner with HHS and the EC committee to figure out then where we can make some changes. We started having these conversations before, so I think there's some work that's definitely there. The idea of recognizing foreign credentials, that has been something that this council has discussed time and time again. I know that I, was one of the people that had pushed for additional funding for the Welcome Back Center. My colleagues all supported that. We have a wealth, a treasure in the county of professionals who need to have some help in that arena. So I think that, and this is mostly for Mr. Nicole Rodriguez Hernandez as well. I think we need to then partner with our General Assembly colleagues through our Office of Intergovernmental Relations to see what we can do in this next session to sharpen that whole area, because I think it's around the state that there is, I think, a missed opportunity in terms of foreign credentials. So I would love to do that. And then two other things I wrote, of course, WorkSource Montgomery. We've worked very hard with WorkSource Montgomery. They need to be partners in how we can do this strategically with Montgomery College, USG, MCPS, the whole pipeline. It's poised. And then the Primary Care Coalition, I know, also has been interested in figuring out, okay, how can we also address a lot of these pieces? So I just wanted to share, kind of like what I heard from you, what I think definitely, from my perspective, would be really important issues to address, to understand once again that, for us here in the county, I mean, I'm hopeful, I feel like we just have a wealth out there with all of you, the Collaboration Council, these nonprofit organizations, with our own then county really stepping up. Compensation has always been an issue. And I used to hear it over and over again with my younger sister who, works in the area of social work. And she works in Fairfax County. Why? Because they offered her a much better salary, much better benefits, and opportunities for promotions, which, you know, she has definitely been recognized as somebody who's an asset and has been promoted and has been extraordinary. And she tried here in Montgomery County. It's not enough. It's like, it's just straightforward, logical, you know, kind of private sector dynamic. You know, you have a growing population with diverse needs, and you have a very low supply. And so, of course, they're going to be recruited by a lot of private sector folks. It's just logical. So you know, so in summary, I just have to say, I mean, you know, I'm on my way out here. I'm term limited, et cetera. But I hope that I can see before I leave a concrete set of initiatives that are targeted, that recognize the value that these professionals bring, that we can grow our pipeline with incentives, and that we can help all of you in the nonprofit sector have the capacity to respond. Because not doing it will just cost us a lot more money. I mean, that's just the bottom line. It's just going to cost so much more. So I really appreciate this, Dr. Kroll, Dr. Santiago. You guys are you know, the right people given your backgrounds to shepherd this through. And I appreciate my colleagues as well who continue to put this front and center. But I think we can do something amazing, and we can absolutely be a model for not just the state, but the region and the country as well. So not so many questions, because you know, the time is sort of short. Just some of my reflections, my observations, and some of the things that I hope the group will definitely come back with very specific proposals and the price tags attached to that, so that we then, when it's time to make those budgetary decisions, can look at how we can either incrementally begin to get us to a point where we can feel better about this issue. Thank you.
Councilmember Navarro, I know the time is short. I know you have to go, and Councilmember Alvarez, I appreciate just a moment just to say that I associate myself with all your comments, to borrow a phrase, but also to say thank you. You are leaving, and we'll have a chance to acknowledge that as you rotate off many more times in the coming months. But just to say that my time as chief was, your support for the behavioral health system was remarkable and deeply appreciated by me and by the staff of HHS and by the community of providers. So just a deep sense of appreciation for your effort and your continued encouragement over the years. So
I thank you. I really thank you for saying that. And it, you know, it's all about our extraordinary residents. It's about this extraordinary county, and just the, you know, point of personal privilege. You know, many of you have mentioned the Haitian community in Venezuela, and my husband and I constantly are in awe of how both of our, you know, home countries where we come from are going through extraordinary crises. But, you know, I always said that one of the ways that I was able to somehow feel better about the fact that I was, you know, going to now have the United States as my adoptive country about 30-something years ago when I married my husband, it was about giving back, and it was about public service. And that is how I felt that I could kind of like almost, you know, for me personally, be able to feel okay about having left. And now I look at the situation both in Venezuela and the situation in Haiti in terms of my husband being Haitian American. And it's a privilege to be able to at least put a little bit of a contribution to some of the people that are arriving who are so desperate for no fault of their own. So I appreciate, you know, some of you mentioning both these communities that are going to need our help, in addition to so many others who are struggling.
Thank you. And we got a year and a half. She's not left yet, so we still need her here. We have one more budget to go through together. So we got some work to do. I had a few follow-up questions, thoughts, reflections, and then Councilmember Jawando is in the queue next as well. And Councilmembers Rice and Glass, if you have anything you want to add, please let me know.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, well, certainly amen to everything Councilmember Navarro said. Thank you all very much for the presentations. It's consistent with what we have been seeing for a number of years, and obviously it's all heightened because of what's transpired over these last 2 years. The other phenomena that I have observed as well is that there's a high degree of burnout among existing staff in our respective agencies, and recruitment has always been a challenge. Retention now is becoming an even bigger challenge than it was before. And, you know, there's no easy solution there because on some level, the good news is the stigma around accessing mental health services, I have observed, has gotten better. More people are asking for help. That's the good news. The challenging news is the capacity and the cultural competency to be able to provide the help that they need. So, and the need, as we know, is growing, and it's hitting every socioeconomic group, every demographic, every generation. And it's really profound and overwhelming, in addition to the waves of immigrants that are coming over experiencing trauma that's hard to process and imagine for any of us. So the spirit of collaboration among our community-based organizations has always been important, but never more so than now. And one of the things that I've always appreciated, both on the nonprofit side and then on the executive branch side, been my observation that our nonprofits have never really viewed each other as competition, but that there truly is a spirit of collaboration and cooperation in leveraging resources and making referrals, not pointing fingers, but trying to find solutions. And so I do think there's an opportunity for us to uniquely address those issues here in our community. But as a council member, I've been reflecting on, like, what can we do as council members? And it's always a little frustrating sometimes because, you know, there's a lot we can do, but then there's also not as much as we'd like to be able to do. But I do think there are 4 things to kind of put this in categories to process this in my own mind, because this entire conversation can become very overwhelming. And I always feel after we leave these work sessions invigorated, but also a little overwhelmed. So I want to think through what are those 4 buckets. And to me, the first is what Councilmember Navarro touched on, and the one that we control the most, and that is the budget. And so as this work group evolves, as has been the case across the board, don't be afraid to think outside the box. My colleagues and I, and Councilmember Jawando and I in particular right now, are working on this concept of universal income to address some of those underlying issues that contribute to the mental health challenges and the stress that our communities are feeling. That is another way of addressing the issues that lead to the need for clinical support, the need for counseling, and the need for social work and case management. But in the area of training, in the area of administrative support, you know, don't be bashful in requesting resources. So that's the first thing we can do. The second thing is in the area of policies. So are there barriers? Are there things at the local, and let's not just think about the local level, are there barriers at the state level too that we are uniquely positioned to be able to address? We're fortunate in having both council members Rice and Hucker having served in the Maryland state delegation, and all of us having strong relationships with our Maryland state delegation. And so what are those barrier issues from a policy level at the local and state level, and by extension, the federal level too? We have a strong partner in the Biden administration. Let's hope, for God's sakes, that it's more than just one term, and that we leverage those relationships and those partnerships there. So the second thing is legislation and policy. The third is, as we are today in this work session, the council is uniquely positioned to create a time and space for us to have these conversations, for us to gather. And as I've shared with many others before in different forums, one of the coolest parts of the job so far is when I make a phone call as a council member, more often than not, it actually gets returned. So how do we leverage that communication and that contact, that ability to gather in a way that's meaningful? And the fourth is private philanthropy. I give all of my colleagues a tremendous amount of credit, in particular Councilmember Jawando over this last year, who has fostered really meaningful and authentic partnerships with our private philanthropic community. Councilmember Rice has done this as well in the education space for many years. But our local philanthropic community is now paying more attention than they have before on local issues. And we are better equipped to be able to tell the story of need because they saw it with their own two eyes through the food distribution and the food insecurity and the long, just mind-boggling lines to get something as simple as food. And they're hearing directly from providers regarding what you are all articulating. So those are 4 areas as the work group evolves that I think there's a clear intersection between the work of the legislative body and specifically the council that we can support, that we can help. And then the final thing I'll mention for now, just again, more of a thought and a reflection, is the issue of mental health is not like a program, right? It's not a service. It's not an organization. It's not a department. This has to be infused as an element of all that we do across the board. Economic development, housing, all of it needs to have something as part of its mission, something as part of its work associated with behavioral health because it's connected to all of it. So I think it's not fair to put you all on the hook for being responsible for all of this, just as I don't think it's unfair, as an example, to put MCPS on the hook exclusively for academic achievement because it's more complicated than that. So I think, you know, as we look for solutions, I think those are ways that we can think about this. And I have to say the diversity is fact, equity is choice, inclusion is action, belonging is an outcome. Don't be surprised, Jose, if you hear that on a stump speech somewhere in your community in the near future, because that is beautiful. And I've heard it before, but in this context, really powerful. So those are some thoughts and reflections. I may have some questions as a follow-up, but I now turn it over to my colleague and good friend, Councilmember Jawando, to follow up with any questions or reflections of his own.
Thank you, Chair Albanaz. This is a really important set of conversations that we're picking back up on, and appreciate all the nonprofit and government partners who are working on this every day. I just want to lift up a couple things that were said in case you just, so we don't forget them. The state board issues that you brought up, Dr. Kroll, and the potential for state legislative change. Like, you know, we need to be, is there a bill? Has it been introduced before? What do we need to do to support it? You know, like that needs to happen like yesterday. And, you know, we're already kind of behind, you know, we need to get that to Melanie Winger, our, you know, to get in our priorities list right now, if, you know, and so, you know, and along with that, I think we should also kind of be tracking what would the changes need to be, but also analyzing what our capacity is here, like doing some sort of review of who, to the extent that we can, understand who are the mental health professionals that might have foreign credentials, you know, because I would assume some of them maybe are working in lower levels or in related fields. How can we get a sense or handle of that so that we can be prepared when there is hopefully a legislative change that is absolutely necessary to, or some sort of alternative certification. So I'd want to know, that's one thing, you know, let us know, you can now or later, you know, if you have thoughts now, you can respond now, but I think we need to know what those are as soon as possible so that we can, the joint committee and probably the full council can get behind some of those changes. And as the largest jurisdiction, you know, and, you know, there's other jurisdictions, as were mentioned, that are dealing with this, you know, but we are certainly dealing with it very acutely. It's one of the blessings of being a county with 4 of the most diverse cities in the country and all the languages we have, you know, we have that. The other thing is the pay and the hiring preferences on our end. So, you know, the analysis of what are we paying, this is Councilmember Albanaz went down this road too, and so did Councilmember Navarro. What do we need to do to get above our the next door? You know, like how much is it going to cost? You know, what's the highest pay governmentally in the region? You know, let's be the number one. You know, I think this is and what do we need to do to get there, and what would the funding need to be, and how would it be implemented? When you have a small pool, we obviously want to build the pool over time, but we're in an emergency now, and we want to get the people who are here now that are qualified to do it. And I think one way to do that, and to ironically not, recruit more people into the field, is to pay more, right? And more people hopefully sign up and start becoming into it. So I'd want to know the answers to those questions. Again, it's part of our analysis. What is the highest pay? What do we need to do to be competitive? And what do we need to do like as soon as possible to do that? And other preferences for MoCo residents, as you mentioned, I think that's a good idea, and those types of things of growing our own. And along with that is the private contractors. And this is where I'll say this and one other thing, and then I'll let anyone respond who wants to. If are there models? We have great relationships with Every Mind and other nonprofit providers, Asante, other people who are here. Is there a model somewhere where we could leverage and use the private providers in some way as part of, I think our nonprofit providers are great, and we need to build your capacity. But again, to the point of we need people, is that happening anywhere? Is that something we could explore to expand capacity and expertise, or is it just trying to beef up what we do to lure people over back to the public sector? I don't know the answer to that. I'm asking. And then those are kind of my three questions that I would like some response to. But the last thing I'll say, I've been really proud to work with Councilmember Rice and all my colleagues. We convened this Student Wellness Action Group, which was convened primarily as a response to the removal of police officers in an enforcement capacity in the schools, but realizing that was tied to one of many of the mental health stressors that are facing students, right? And we also increased money for restorative justice and for therapeutic services and other things along with that. And there are other recommendations that in the interim SWAG report that are robust recommendations around student well-being. That group will continue to meet even after they finish their last report. And I think there's a big role for them. We talk about the type of diverse needs we have, just Black students in general, African-American students, Latino students, the whole range within that, our Asian American students, our Indigenous students, our students with disabilities. There's a whole range of stressors where you need diverse, culturally competent, proficient folks to address a whole range of needs, i.e. racism, right? i.e. Immigration status and what's going on. There's a lot of barriers, and I want to make sure we're encompassing that when we think about it. And I know we are, but I just want to give voice to it. It's a large set of diverse needs, not just language is one of many, but we have a lot that we need to make sure we're addressing. So that's what I'll say for now. But if there's any comments from any of the folks, I see a couple hands up, so that's good.
So I see Joe Wilson's hand up, so
you're the boss. So we'll go. How about we go Dr. Kroll and then Joe Wilson and then whoever else.
I'm not sure what I'm the boss of these days. I get told when I take out the trash. So a couple of things just to respond to what you're saying, Councilmember DeWanda. One is that who are our professionals with foreign credentials in the county? I believe that the Welcome Back Center did an assessment of the numbers of foreign trained professionals who might be interested in being re-credentialed. So we can ask them to reprise that and look at it for us. Certainly other jurisdictions are dealing with this. We are not alone by any stretch of the imagination in this. We just happen to be one of the most culturally diverse counties in the country, and with three of the most culturally diverse cities in the country, which is, I think, a great thing. But it does come with the challenge of having to address this and being out in front. I believe, and I'm not sure, but I believe that OLO may have done some work on salaries and salary assessments in the area to get a sense of where the county stands and where the provider community stands in terms of what we pay versus what the private sector pays. I know that it is just from personal experience that and from looking at psychiatry salaries, that we are woefully underfunded for psychiatry. And I can imagine, and I certainly know what a private practitioner in the field could make in 25 hours is as much or more than we're going to pay them ever for a full-time job. So there's a level of commitment. We have to think about what else we can do. Tuition forgiveness or support with tuition or college bills for graduation. So those kinds of things I think have to get done. The other one is that, to your point, is anybody else doing work with the providers in the community around the country? There is a program that has operated, and I don't know what condition it's in now, but it was called the Western Interstate Compact for Higher Education, WICHE, W-I-C-H-E, I think, that worked with communities and community colleges, undergraduate and graduate institutions to have community members trained and educated so that they, in exchange for them providing services in their home community. So there are some models out there. The conversation we had a few weeks ago with Councilmember Albornoz with a couple of providers led me to think that we have some providers here who are interested in doing education and training and supervision. If we can figure out how to harness that into a collective countywide effort to build that kind of pipeline, then we're recruiting not just for the department, but we're recruiting for providers and for our private provider community as well. So there are some opportunities. And then the last thing I'll say is this, and I'll stop, that therapy is not the only thing that is therapeutic. So when we think about mental health, we need to be thinking about the mental health and wellness of the community and what promotes wellness. So meditation is an obvious one. And so having folks do things in meditation, therapeutic recreation is a thing that we have done this year that helps. But also conflict resolution strategies for folks and opportunities for folks to engage in dialogue around race and racism and et cetera, are all things that build the mental health of the community and wellness of the community that we have to begin to think about. We start with staffing, and we start with the obvious deep end pieces that we need to start with, but all along the pipeline, there are places and opportunities for people to help protect and build the mental health of the community.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'm coming right to you, Joseph, or Joe. I don't know if you go by Joe or Joseph. I'm glad you mentioned that, and I meant to mention Pat O'Neill, God rest her soul, who put forward the proposal that was passed last year that you can now take a mental health day as a sickness. You know, your well-being. It's not just that you're physically sick; you can now be not well mentally, and how that's a change in policy. It didn't cost anything, but that could have tremendous impact. And Nick Asante was very involved in that, the former student board member as well. And to your point of, and that's why the restorative justice and I think the police free schools effort, all that is it's all integrated in the Be Well 365, because there's a lot of ways to help that isn't, but that all being said, we still need the staffing and we still need more, for folks who do have deeper needs. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you so much. So one thing you questioned in terms of that private practice and that sort of, can we partner with those providers as a way to leverage their availability and participation in providing mental health services? And it just resonated in terms of our experiences. We've done in the last 3 years, we've done about 40 or so exit interviews with staff that have left for other positions. And we found there's definitely common threads in terms of why they're headed to the private practice setting, right? Money, of course, is one of them. But secondly is work experience. And so to the point some of you raised about burnout, that working in a community mental health setting or in non-private practice setting, there is a degree of burnout that takes place for folks that I think is not present in private practice, which is make your own hours, set your own rates, and therefore you can better manage a work-life balance. Whereas if you're with a mental health agency or organization, it's your productivity or your utilization. Have you met your goal? So there is this I think greater sensitivity to the work experience, and so we've tried to add some of the things that we think would be helpful, whether it's been staff mental health care. So our staff, we've given them days off, we've had retreats, we've been able to bring in resources for their own mental health and well-being and addressing burnout and stress. we've tried to also adjust our model as far as, well, maybe we can reduce the utilization rate. So JESA is at a low point. Typical industry average is around 70 to 75% of your time is spent delivering billable services. We're at 65%, and we keep trying to keep it fairly low, although that sounds high, but we keep it fairly low to help people manage that balance and hopefully not experience some of that burnout. And then the third element to the exit interviews that really resounded with us was being able to pursue specialty kinds of training or specialty kinds of practice, right? So there were folks that say, I really want to work with, the deaf community in doing, work with that population, or I want to try acceptance and commitment therapy, or there's this practice is on the cutting edge of developing evidence-based practice for anxiety. So there are other draws there. Again, with the JESA Training Institute, we've tried to say, okay, well, let's try, can we provide opportunity for people to become trained and licensed in evidence-based practices? So I'll say, and all those things, by the way, can use additional resources and funding. So certainly there's still the budget question and having additional resources for agencies to allocate. But I think those three factors are what we've been focused on in terms of retention, in addition to salaries, that I think might be helpful. But it's incredibly difficult to leverage, their resources because of the need in the community being so great and almost overwhelming. I mean, as everyone here, I think, understands and agrees, it's great that people are accessing mental health more, but boy, it's a really overwhelming circumstance to manage that front door. And so trying to mimic some of the challenges some of the benefits in private practice has been really helpful for us. Of course, we're still missing the mark, but that might prove some helpful information there. Yeah.
No, it is. There's a lot to learn there. Dr. Santiago, and then I'll pass it on. I think you had your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to underline the opportunity that we have with the peer support specialists that were funded through the fiscal year 22 budget, thanks to the support both from the executive as well as the council, peer support specialists for the mobile crisis and outreach teams. And you may recall that the model here in Montgomery County is that those teams are going to pair a peer support specialist with lived experience with a therapist. That's different than other models where our current model that deploys two therapists. So that's going to be a huge opportunity to bring in specialists and people that are involved in a critical area of behavioral health, which is a crisis response, and bring in people that don't necessarily need to bring the academic qualifications, but certainly bring the lived experience, which is highly valued in the crisis response. On top of that, you may know that we did receive a SAMHSA grant for an additional hiring of 6 peer support specialists. So now we're talking about 10 of them that we hope to hire over the next year. And recall that Luis Cardona uses them. We use them in the STEER program, but we use them also with the work of PYD, and it's with great success, as you know, both in the STEER program as well as that program. So I'm anticipating that this is going to be a very important part of the pipeline that we're working on.
Appreciate that. And just Ms. Rodriguez, I saw you shaking your head, but hopefully you got the things I mentioned. Hopefully we can follow up on those in future in substantive ways. Thank you to the chairs.
Thank you. Chairman Rice.
Thanks so much. So just to reiterate some of the things, so Councilmember Duando, I heard you. That was actually when Councilmember Navarro had mentioned about what we could do in reaching out to that very first point. I wrote down, ask IGA to promote state bill, accepting that licensure. It's incredibly important, but it's also something, as you heard from Councilmember Navarro, we've been talking about for a long time. We've been talking about this way before the pandemic, years ago, and so it's high time that this happens now. I think that, again, seizing the opportunity of where so many now across our state are so laser focused on this, it is not just us any longer. And that is actually when we actually see state bills get passed, when other people now are impacted beyond just us, who are a more diverse community than many of the folks across the state. But now folks are starting to see that. And so that's where the momentum comes in. So I did just want to say, yes, definitely, we will follow up with that. And then as your representative at MACO, we'll make sure that we do that. Speaking of MACO, I want to just go to NACO really quick, because Councilmember Jwanda, you touched on this also, and it's in response to what Dr. Kroll was saying about Medicaid reimbursement. Look, that's definitely a NACO priority. That's something that's right in the wheelhouse. And so as your NACO representative as well, and the chair of Education and Human Services for NACO across this country, I'll make sure that I bring this up with Rachel Mackey so that we can lift that up. I know that's something that, again, is going to be where folks are struggling all across this country, not just here in Montgomery County and not just in the state of Maryland. And so we'll want to make sure that we lift that up as an issue. I know it's been something that's been discussed before, but certainly something that we can continue to elevate. I did want to acknowledge that our school partners who have been watching, Montgomery College specifically, and congratulate them on their program certification. I know that they just got certified by MHAC, by the Maryland Higher Education Commission, to have a behavioral health program. And that's huge, right? Because when you talk about growing from within and growing from locally, there's no better place to do that than at an institution like Montgomery College. And so help is on the way. It's just, unfortunately, we need more than just that. That will certainly be a part of our solution, our tools in the toolbox, but certainly something in which we'll see more students coming that way. And to that end, that's where I want to end with a question. Are there schools that we've seen, right? Because Dr. Kroll, you know, we've been talking about this for a long time. Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Nusa, you know that we've been talking about this, Dr. Santiago and Mr. Wilson. We've all been talking about how we need to grow the cohort of students. And we've talked about focusing on our, you know, institutions of color, you know, whether they're HBCUs or others, and working with them. Are there any schools that have done anything yet, right? It's great to have the conversation, but are we seeing any success? And is that something, because we have a former county executive on the Board of Regents at the University System of Maryland, then we could hope to, you know, leverage with him and say, hey, this is something that the University System of Maryland should be doing as well. So Mr. Hernandez, please.
Yes, thank you. In regards to local universities, I graduated from Washington Adventist University many moons ago. So that is a wonderful program that currently has an addictions certification specialized program. They have predominant large minority student population. And, you know, I didn't hear them pop up during our discussion. I'm sitting there going like, well, I know who I'm going to be calling and say, hey, you guys got to get on the ball and get connected to this committee, because that's another wonderful Montgomery County-based educational institution that can be part of the answer. In addition to the wonderful programs at University of Maryland, you know, definitely there's still a lot of growth. They've done some great things. What I see is really a need to, like you're asking, the nonprofits come together and rally around this. The institutions really need to come together and rally around this, and let this be a really Montgomery County team effort where we have private sector, both nonprofit and for-profit, the universities meeting the needs of help fulfill this pipeline. I think we're closer than we realize, because I believe they really want this. It's just a matter of making the connections happen. So those are just some of my thoughts.
And Mr. Hernandez, I have to be honest, my cousin actually graduated from Washington Adventist University. She's now in LCSW. Unfortunately, she's in Texas, but certainly know the program very well, and it's awesome and amazing. And you couldn't be more right. It's certainly a gem that's here in the community. Anybody else weighing in on anything else they've seen with other universities especially our HBCUs and others that are out there, in because of the conversation we've had for years around continuing to grow this cohort. Dr. Kroll, I see your microphone.
So just a couple of things. I know that we've had an MOU with University of Shady Grove for some time now to try to identify not just behavioral health folks, but nursing staff, researchers, et cetera, to bring them into the university, into the department for training. And I think that they are certainly open to addressing some of the diversity issues we've talked about. The HBCUs have a long history of recruiting candidates of color and bringing them to the fold. I don't know that they have, and they do, and we partner with them to do internships and residency programs for folks, but there is more work to be done on that front, I think. I don't know currently, because I'm out of touch with it, what the university is doing regarding graduate admissions. When I was going into graduate school at Rutgers, the university was doing a controlled experiment around whether or not to use standardized tests in the admissions and whether or not it made a difference in the quality of the graduates that they admitted. And I don't remember which cohort of the research I was in at this point, but it increased the diversity of the population. They made a deliberate attempt to increase the diversity of graduate students in my program, both by increasing the total number of admissions and by increasing changing the flexibility in the criteria for admissions. So there's just some examples of things that I know are going on. I think there's undoubtedly more than I'm aware of right now. Oh, I should say the Anna G. Mendez University a year or two ago here locally was starting up a social work program, and we were talking about it. I think they had to close the program under COVID, if I'm not mistaken. But we were looking forward to partnering with them and helping them to help students matriculate into the field. So if there's an opportunity to reboot that program, there may be that'd be an opportunity we should explore.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Mr. Chair, back to you.
Thanks. Just one, as we're closing out, and this is related to state legislation, there are key positions in essential areas that we're struggling to fill. This is another good example of that. And so I do think that we're going to have to work with our state partners aggressively to see what benefits we can provide, what incentives we can provide to help us with recruitment in a variety of areas. So there's got to be more to come on that. So I guess what are the next steps? Should we have another session? I think we probably should. And let's give it several months to give you all a sufficient runway. But Dr. Kroll, what's reasonable in terms of reporting back to act upon some of the recommendations that have been made and the work group that's been formed? 3 months, 4 months, 6 months? What do you think?
I think if we're going to do it in this cycle, this is specific. I would probably say February-ish, somewhere in that time, to give us a chance to do some initial meeting, to reconvene the players, bearing in mind that we're heading into the fall and all that implies for us and for everybody else in terms of a busy time of year. But it's worth doing something so we have something to share with you all that as we lead into the next budget cycle. I would say that if we come back together at the end of February or late January, and by then we should have, if we're going to do something, if we're working on something, assuming we're working on something for FY23, that will already be in the pipeline, but we can discuss that and figure out where we go next with that.
So from a budget perspective, I think, I've really come to appreciate when the executive branch makes their own recommendations within the budget, which obviously makes it a little bit easier for us to be able to manage. And I know this has been a priority of the county executive as well. To Councilmember Jawando and Councilmember Rice's point, and I guess Councilmember Navarro too, if there is legislation, particularly in Annapolis, we need to act now to get it in the queue. And so if there's something that makes sense for us to be able to follow through on, and we're all fortunate that Chairman Rice has really positioned us as a county well to represent us when going to MACO and NACO for that matter, and is really a trusted and well thought of leader in that space. And so there's an opportunity for us to leverage those relationships. So don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe we can tease out that component of the overall work group to see if they can come up with something a little bit more rapidly, maybe even before Thanksgiving, to see if we can make some recommendations to the delegation and then put the full weight of that as a priority to our delegation.
I think that's something we can accomplish. In fact, I can almost tell you. I mean, I can tell you what I think in this moment, and that is that we need to really understand where the boards and commissions are, the licensing boards are in relation to foreign-born credentialing for foreign-trained professionals. I know that each one of our fields, social work, counseling, psychology, psychiatry, all have different sets of criteria that they use. And is this an opportunity to look at this and ask that they give us, that the state do some work to develop some guidelines and some processes for how to simplify the process for foreign-born and foreign-trained professionals to be licensed.
Yeah, we can point to what we've done successfully here with the Welcome Back Center. And, I mean, this, I'm sure I'm naive on this, but this should be a layup from our state partners, just in terms of, doing this and doing it right, taking advantage of existing professionals that we have here. I see Mr. Nusta has his hands up.
So, Gabe, I would say that Welcome Back Center certainly is a wealth of information and knowledge around that. So we'll follow up with them to tap their thinking around this, because I know they've done some work on this as well already at the state level, and it's worth now adding our collective weight behind some of the things that they've suggested, I'm sure.
Awesome. Yes, go ahead, sir.
I understand the whole process of licensing. It takes a while. It takes some background checks and make sure the person you're giving the license to is somebody who can practice effectively. Is there a way that this set of people, the people who are foreign credentialed, can be linked into the system or into that field with some kind of provisional license, some kind of hand-holding mechanism to guide them into the process once that license comes out? Because sometimes the license comes out, but there is just no connection. There's just no person to guide them. There is no mentorship. So I think that's something that we can look into.
I agree. Dr. Kroll, any response to that?
Oh, just to say that I think that is actually one of the recommendations that we put forward through the Welcome Back Center, is that they suggested a provisional license that would operate under some supervision of someone who was fully credentialed in the state. It needs some work, I'll say it that way. But yes, I think that is one of the things we should be considering pushing for.
All right, great. Well, thank you, everyone. This is a very productive session. So we'll look for some recommendations, some legislative recommendations for this session, and then we'll have a follow-up more specific to budget recommendations in February. So thank you all so much. And with that, we are adjourned.